Welcome to Project Comedy, a podcast by and for military veterans doing stand-up comedy, turning military banter into quality stand-up comedy acts. We might be veterans, but our comedy aims to get everybody laughing. Comedy was so much funnier when we were young. We need to reclaim the humour of a more innocent age, because nothing says family entertainment better than wall-to-wall racism, blanket misogyny, white men in dinner jackets doing blackface, 30 minutes of Englishman, Irishman and Scotsman gags, and an honest belief that the N-word is a term of endearment, not a racial slur. Let's be honest. A lot of comedy hasn't aged well. But it's also more than true that there were some amazing acts and shows that could be relevant today. In fact, shouldn't we bring back some of those styles, formats and shows? So what's worth revisiting from the past and potentially giving it an update and bringing it to a modern audience? Equally, what should we avoid at all costs and leave to rot in the comedy dungeons? To determine if nostalgia is nothing more than rose-tinted glasses or if there's something worthwhile in the past, I'm joined by Gabriel, pass me my shoulder pads Murphy, and I'm Jay, Operation U-Tree, want to interview me because I was a kid in the 1970s for no other reason, Saunders. Hi, guys.
Awesome. I like how I'm the shoulder pad one. I was Dynasty.
I was thinking about this when we came up with the topic for tonight, comparing old and new. And I remember something, it's going to sound like a non sequitur, but I remember when I joined up and I was doing my basic training, I was really lucky that I had a really, really wise divisional officer. He told me that at the training establishment I was doing my basic at, he said, this place is full of dyers and flyers. And that's really, really useful. He said, what you've got to do is learn how to copy the best from the best and avoid the worst of the worst. And I've sort of taken that across into my comedy now. And, Jay Sodegar said to us when we did our basic training, our beginner's course, he said, I'm going to ruin comedy for you because you're going to be able to understand how acts work. And that's sort of true, because now when I look at comics, I go, that's why you're good, or that's why you're bad. But you can actually look at comics throughout the ages, can't you, and see why they were good back then and if it would still be relevant today. Do you think that's true?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, everything kind of flows along with a general consensus of whatever is happening on in the world at that time. So, you know, like back in the day when like the whole thing was like the women coming out of the woodwork and it. So it was like,
yeah,
you know, women were getting the rights, women were doing more powerful things, and they weren't just people who, you know, washed the front step and did the dishes and the high heels and all that sort of stuff. You know, they actually had some contribution to stuff. Granted, not much, but you know.
I go back to when I was a kid, and obviously you're that much younger than me. Did you ever hear of a TV series called The Comedians?
I heard of it, yeah. I didn't see any of it.
And I looked back to, well, I ended up doing a look-up of it, and you know, who were the comedians that were on it. And there's not a single female. Not a single female that I could find that performed in The Comedians. And this was the day of, you know, stand-up comics, all wore dinner jackets with ruffly shirts and what have you, stood there with a microphone and just told gags. But it was every single act was a male, not a single female there.
But there wouldn't have been a disabled one either, or an ethnic background, or another one for another ethnic background.
There were two black guys. There were two black guys on the circuit, but that was their entire thing. Was about them being black, and it was, my mate, it wouldn't stand today. It was sort of like, it was almost like they were apologizing for being black, or, oh yeah, my food's too spicy for you guys. It's cringeworthy to look at a lot of it now.
It's so funny to think about, like, you know, and you got to think of like some of the acts that have transitioned from back in the day to now, like Eddie Murphy and his stand-up, when, yeah, you know, he's gone all the way, and it's, you know, he's gotten into the films, and it's weird how he's kind of doing the same thing, but in a more politically correct way now.
I think that's the difference between. If I go back to the 70s and 80s, America was far more progressive with comedy than the UK ever was. We only became progressive with what they ended up terming alternative comedians. And when I say alternative, the only difference was they weren't wearing dinner jackets and they hadn't all come from doing working men's clubs. But the American comics were. Yeah. I've made a little list of some comics from yesteryear that I thought were class acts. And I'm sure you can add to it. But guys that I think have skills that we still would find relevant today. And actually, some of their skills and some of their comedy, maybe we should be emulating today. And so that little list I've made is Bob Monkhouse, Dave Allen, Jasper Carrot.
He's still touring.
Still touring. Brian Connolly, Freddie Starr.
Yeah.
And all for different reasons. All for different reasons.
I mean, in the sort of Brian Connolly and Freddie Starr sort of realms of world, you've still got the comedians who sing as well. You know, like Bo Burnham's now. You know, it's still a thing, but obviously they weren't. You know, they're not doing the types of shows that they would, where they were very.
But that's why Brian Connolly and Freddie Starr were really great on the circuit for their time, because they were controlled chaos. That was what made them funny. It was still family entertainment, but it was controlled chaos on the stage. You didn't know what they were going to do next.
The saddest thing about it for me is that you could turn around to an audience and say it's a puppet, and only half the people will get it. Yeah,
that was absolute genius here with that crossover to actually bringing in cultural references that were appropriate to the younger generation. He was one of the first guys to do it. All the others were only trying to make the parents laugh. But Brian was bringing in kids' culture to actually make it true family entertainment, and to be emulating Philip Schofield in the Broom Closet and it's a puppet was just a genius moment. Actually, the kids in the room need entertaining as well.
I always thought he was Pat Sharp, Nick Frisby.
He just thought that Brian was Pat Sharp.
Completely looked like him. No. When he did Nick Frisby, the first time I saw him, I thought it was Pat Sharp.
Yeah. And but Freddie, he appealed to the kids as well because it was that element of slapstick and chaos in there that was going to make the kids laugh. But he was also a very talented musician and singer.
I think the funniest bit was when he was doing lip syncing, and the tape kept on speeding up and slowing down.
Oh God, that was the stretch tape cassette. Oh God, that was brilliant.
Oh, it's just gas. I mean, like I said, no one will be able to do that now. You know,
there was one comic, I can't remember. He was quite a mature bloke, but his entire thing was the microphone didn't work properly, so you would miss every bit of. He basically sounded like my internet connection whenever we record a podcast.
That sounds great.
I'm a huge fan of Bob Monkhouse. I'm a huge fan of Bob Monkhouse because people will turn around today and go, right, who are the hardest working comedians on the circuit at the moment? And they'll instantly say Jimmy Carr because the amount of work he puts into it. Bob was the workhorse. He was the man that every day he had to write, he had his legendary gag books and what have you. Yeah. And unfortunately, he got tarred with this reputation for being a quiz show host and being too polished and what have you. But that wasn't his true stand-up comedy. He was, I mean, if you've ever watched that BBC One documentary about his last ever gig, he was just, what a comedian, what a writer.
His level of innuendo is through the roof as well, though.
Oh, God. The stuff he could come out with would be considered massively blue if he had actually said what a modern comedian would say. It was just beautiful.
It's funny as well, like, especially I just had a massive flashback there to me mum and me nan and that. And like, he's saying like, oh, he's so blue. But then someone like Bob Monkhouse would come on and he'd say pretty much exactly a really blue line. But they'd be pissing themselves laughing, and it's just like, hang on a fucking minute.
Yeah.
Wait,
I mean,
what's going on?
another one that's brilliant for it. Barry Cryer. That man had a way with innuendo. Do you know Barry at all?
Not personally, no.
So he was massively on the scene with outside of you could almost call him the fourth goodie. So prior to the goodies, there was sorry, I haven't a clue. Before that was sorry, I'll say that again. And they all used to be in Barry's blue humor was outstanding. One of my favorite gags I heard of him tell. My former mother-in-law, she went to university with him, and he used to perform at the jazz club, and he'd just sing some songs, but drop in blue innuendos. So one time he was singing, "I wonder who's kissing her now," and then paused and went, "But has anybody ever asked the question where her now is?" And it's just sort of like, my God, how blue is that when you actually take it into context? That's intelligent humor.
But it just makes me laugh, like the double standards of it. It's like, oh yeah, you can innuendo at it, and that's hilarious. But if you actually say what's going on, that's just rude.
Jimmy Carr will say, yes, I was playing with my tummy banana, and apparently that's filthy.
Yeah.
Me and the missus were having relations is okay because it's being told by a comic of 20 years beforehand.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. I don't get how people can get so worked up about certain words. I mean, obviously, like, you know, throwing out ass, cunt, shit, and everything. But I mean, what are you meant to do? Yeah. Stand there and just go poo poo? It's just like, nice one. Exactly.
I'm 40. One of the guys I mentioned before, I'm gonna guess you're a fan of, but the legend that was Dave Allen. Because that guy broke so many barriers, but he had to come to England to break those barriers.
Oh, I love him. Love him.
I mean,
I love anyone that'll smash through the fence that everyone else is sitting on. I'm a fan
of. I love the way that he would, because it's like when a couple of weeks ago when we were doing the podcast, you asked me to look up the sex education videos from Ireland.
Yeah.
Oh my God, mate! I'm there going, you need to do a routine about that because it's absolutely hysterical. But there he was 40 years ago telling jokes about the Roman Catholic faith.
Yeah.
My God, he must have been hated by so many sectors of the Republic of Ireland for daring to take the piss out of the shepherd's crook in a priest's hand of a bishop's. He was, but then he finished the show with, "And may your God go with you." It was just genius what he did.
Oh, it's just brilliant. I love all that sort of stuff.
One that I think is understated, and we should go back and look at what he did, is Jasper Carrott. Because Jasper Carrott, I'm going to be technical about this, he wasn't a stand-up comedian.
No. He
was a stand comedian. I remember seeing him in the early 80s perform at, it was in Bristol. I'm trying to remember the name of the venue. It'll come back to me at some point. For the entire show, 2-hour show, he sat on a bar stool in the middle of the stage and didn't leave it once. And I remember hurting myself laughing. He wasn't using body language or anything like that. It was all about his tone, his attitudes, and his facial expressions was enough to make a room fall apart laughing.
His level of storytelling was just amazing.
And bringing in random things like he got so famous for the insurance claims, what people had put on our car insurance claim forms.
Yeah.
I pulled into the wrong driveway and collided with a tree I haven't got.
Yeah. What was the big one? Was it an Australian fella or something like that? He said, I saw a sad, deprived woman's face bouncing off the roof of my car.
Yeah, but, and another one that's just come to mind, mate. Another one that's just come to mind. Les Dawson.
Yeah.
What an all-rounder. I mean, let's not just talk about the humour and what have you. The piano playing.
Mm-hmm.
To play a piano that badly meant he had to have such a serious, beautiful talent as a musician to make the piano that bad.
Well, even as well, if we're going into doing all the things of doing things like bad, you know, Russ Abbott.
Oh, Russ, he used to. Well, I used to live in a place called Corsham. He lived just outside of the village, like the town I lived in a place called Skidpad. He was our legend. That we live close to Russ Abbott. Russ Abbott's madhouse was up. I mean that the rocker character he used to do with the ridiculously long quiff and what have you in the Teddy Boy suit. The man was a genius. And you look at the other comedians that came from his madhouse, like Les Dennis and what have you. He brought an entire era of comedians to the stage.
Yeah. And then
what was the name of the large lady? Bella something or other used to do Blunder Woman.
Don't know. And then you got like, you know, people who play the piano and stuff like that. Every single time someone says comedian who plays the piano, I think Victoria Wood.
Oh God, another pianist. Yeah, Dudley Moore. Yeah, Dudley Moore. Amazing with the piano. The never-ending ending.
Yeah.
Because when he was doing Pete and Dud, oh my God, that was just again, Gene. That's something that is still relevant today. I think in double acts, and we'll talk about double acts again. The point of Pete and Dud was trying to make the other one corpse, was trying to make the other person laugh, and that was what their humor was all about.
And then who did it was the Australian fella, all in the best possible taste, fucking swinging his leg.
Oh no, it wasn't Aussie. You were talking Kenny Everett.
Kenny Everett, yeah, I loved him. He was fucking fantastic.
He was direct opposites. He was hated by so many people for two factors. One, because he was a closet homosexual, never talks about sexuality. For many years he was. For many years. But it was also the fact that he was a massive conservative supporter. Yeah. So he was sort of like, he was the rally guy for the young conservatives. And it's sort of like, well, how can he be gay and a conservative at the same time?
It's just amazing.
He was just, okay. Let's go to the negative spectrum then. Let's go back to some of the acts that didn't age well. I put down 3, and having looked over statistics for our listeners, I think I'm going to make some people unhappy with the first 2 people. Well, all 3 of these I'm going to mention because we do have we have got quite a demographic of you listeners that are over the age of 60. I'm going to turn around and they haven't aged well at all. Jim Davidson, Bernard Manning, Roy Chubby Brown.
Yeah.
I know they're of different eras, and I don't think their comedy stands the test of time.
I don't think it does, but then, you know, like on this sort of platform, just like on how many other platforms and so many other people, you know, there's other things that aren't going to stand the test of time, you know, and you've either got to kind of roll with it and adapt to the times and the changes, or accept that you're a part of a dying breed and you're gone.
I mean, and I've got a reason why I don't think they don't stand the test of time for each one of them. Let's take Bernard as the first one. Bernard, basically, you look back at it now, and it was straightforward racism.
Fully.
It was. Yeah. I'm taking the piss out of these people because I don't like them.
Yeah.
They're not white. They're not Anglo-Saxon. I mean, he didn't like the Welsh. He didn't like the Scots. He didn't like the Irish. If you weren't English, didn't like you, and he's just going to rip the piss. I'm not going to say the same thing about Jim Davidson. Jim was, and I think still is, he was more casual racism. It's of an era of but the problem with what he was doing was he was trying to be superior. So characters like Chalky White was thick. He was an idiot. He was, you know, white people are superior to these inferior, thick black people. And that's why Jim isn't relevant today, because he's not willing to turn around and go, do you know what? That's a really stupid stereotype. I wouldn't do that stuff today. He's trying to defend what he did back then, and that's not excusable. That's not a decent excuse.
I think he's of that era of I'm not racist, but era,
yes.
you know. Like
don't look now, but there's somebody that's not white in the corner.
Yeah, like my mother comes up with some of the best lines that I've ever heard in my life. Like, she still calls like black people, she still calls them coloured people and stuff like that.
That was my mother. That was my mother.
Yeah, and because she worries that calling people black is being racist.
I remember when in my mum's last months, she spent a lot of time having chemotherapy and what have you. And she had the most amazing nurse, lovely, lovely lady called Adele. She was West African descent. Mum called her Blossom. And I turned round to her, and I was a serving lieutenant commander when this happened. I was going into the hospital ward wearing my uniform. Mum, why are you calling her Blossom? She went, I'll never be able to pronounce her name. I went, her name's Adele. And she went, yeah, it's not an English name, is it? And it was just sort of like, do you realise that that's racist, Mum? She went, I didn't call her black. She's a lovely coloured lady. And it's sort of like, what colour is she, Mum? Is she green with polka dots? No, she just happens to be black. And she just, but she, her generation.
It amazes me because I've been on the bad end of racism like once. And I've witnessed like the bad end of racism through like some of my friends that I have. I've witnessed it like a couple of times, and I find it so bizarre that it still happens. But anytime that I hear of something racist, I just can't help but fucking piss myself laughing because it's so obscene. It's just unbelievable that it can still happen.
That's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons I love Reginald D. Hunter. I think he's absolute genius to be deep south, black, American comedian, and then he makes you see racism through a different lens when he turns around and goes, you English, you Brits are rubbish at racism. Ginger isn't a race.
Yeah.
Gingers are not a race, but you are ruder to ginger people than you are to black, Asians, Orientals, blah, blah. And it's suddenly a fucking hell.
And I'll fucking challenge them on that.
The world through. Well, you've got a ginger one in your house, mate.
Yeah, I'll send her to live with him for a day. An hour. An hour, and he'll hate gingers.
and I'll finish off with why I think Roy Chubby Brown doesn't. He's no longer. It's because he was pure crude. There was no intelligence about it. It's let's be as crude as I possibly can.
I think he's a mixture of the crude and bigotry and sexist kind of realms of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that he had going for him was the self-deprecation side of life. Because he admitted he was fat and he was a wanker. So,
and let's be honest, we turn around to Bernard and Roy Chubby Brown. These were not good-looking fellas.
No,
I mean, if they were on the comedy circuit today, we'd be there going, "You ugly cunt."
I mean, for me to turn around and say someone's ugly, that's a fucking statement. And
fucking hell, mate, you know how terminally single I am.
Oh.
I am better looking than both of those bastards.
Mate, them fellas made me feel like Chris Hemsworth and Jason Momoa and fucking Brad Pitt and everyone else was dead attractive.
I'm thinking about writing a routine about white racists from the UK or from the of the British Isles. I'm sorry, I'm going to include the Republic in the British Isles. Sorry, mate. But
I'll learn stuff this time.
Why is it they're a couple of chromosomes short of the full package? I mean, why is it that these people that proclaim that white people, Anglo-Saxons are better, Nick fucking Griffin of the NP looks like he was involved in a house fire at birth. He is not what we're going to call Aryan perfection. Why are all these fucking racists deformed motherfuckers?
I just love how everyone who's got this thing of like, oh, we are more superior. I mean, I'm fairly sure that like every single person has their own unique traits. So, they're clearly not superior. Like no one particular race can say, apart from the Chinese being good at maths. That's better.
Don't insult our future overlords. There are far more of them than there are of us. And I'm fairly sure they're in behind the algorithms of this podcast. They'll decide where we're allowed to be broadcast. So,
well, I've got the Americans after me. I might as well get the fucking Chinese after me as well.
We haven't had a Chinese listener yet. I think the firewall's too intact. They know about you and I, mate, and we say cunt too often. It doesn't translate into Chinese well. So,
can you imagine the Chinese symbol for cunt?
I know what the British Sign Language is for it, but and that doesn't work on radio or podcasts. But anyway, the other thing I was looking at, mate, was when I was looking back when we came up with this topic, was 70s and 80s seemed to have been the 70s and 80s were the highlight of it for me that I can think of, but it went on before, and it seems to be irrelevant today. But they were the era of the double act. Definitely. You look back, and again, I've made a big list. So let's go through a couple of them. Some are legendary. Couple you might not have heard of, mate. So let me know if you've not heard of them. Obviously, Morecambe and Wise.
Oh, definitely.
The two Ronnies.
Yeah.
Little and Large.
Yeah.
Cannon and Ball. Hale and Pace. Hinge and Bracket. Ever heard of Hinge and Bracket?
No.
Drag Act. They pretended to be sort of like they used to do loads of operettas, but they were a drag act going through. Smith and Jones, French and Saunders, Fry and Laurie, Newman and Baddiel, Reeves and Mortimer. Today, we've got Ant and Dec, and they're not fucking comedians.
They're just shit. This is
Can
the thing.
Can you think of any A or B list comedy duos at the moment? Because I've been racking my brains and I can't think of a double act.
No, not in nowadays. Not nowadays realms. But like I love how Ant and Dec are trying the hardest to bring back that era of they were this like multi-platform people where they can act and they can dance, they can dance and they can present and they can joke but they can't.
The only thing Ant and Dec can do is present and be cheeky chappies, cheeky Newcastle boys. That is their only selling point. They're cheeky Newcastle boys that are good at fronting a show.
Yeah.
They're not comedians. They're not entertainers. They're not singers. They're not dancers. But they're a pair of comfortable faces on the TV. Dick and Dom are sort of like, a B-list version.
Yeah,
but I think Dick and Dom have got more talent.
I think they were the closest thing to what we would think of good. I mean, Chuckle Brothers, obviously one of them's not around anymore.
And I love the Chuckle Brothers. I thought they were geniuses, but they weren't family entertainers. They were aimed at kids purely, weren't they? And and looking at their aesthetics. I mean, we were talking about ugly bastards. My God, who would employ them for a children's birthday party? They look like a pair of nonces. I know they weren't, but that's where they looked.
It must be hard for the fella who's still around now, just going to me. To me.
Why are we revisiting dark humour again?
It's just the most depressing show of him just crying on the stage and every now and then just going, to me, someone say to you.
I go back over that list, and the first four of them are what I would call the 1970s, early 80s stereotype of the double act. When I say Morecambe and Wise, Little and Large, Cannon and Ball, it was the straight man and the funny man.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is relevant anymore, because who would want to play the straight man in a comedy duo these days?
I don't think anybody wants to be a straight man these days.
I mean, it's sort of like Bernie Wise.
You completely missed that line, didn't you?
Go on, say it again.
I said, no, don't think anybody actually wants to be a straight man these days.
Mate, I've been rejected by both genders. I can't be a straight man or a gay man. Nobody wants to touch this pair of balls, I'll tell you.
and the bisexual equivalent of being able to do fucking nothing with both.
I've told this gag on the podcast before, and I swear it's a true story. I've got a couple of gay mates that live in the marina, and they put me on Grindr. They took some of my profile pictures and put me on Grindr, and I didn't even get a match on Grindr. I am that repulsive to both genders. Not even gay men want me. They've got more taste than wanting this sad act. But it's the two Ronnies, though. Two Ronnies were a break from that. There wasn't a straight man there.
No, I loved the two Ronnies. How the chemistry that them two had together, that's unmatchable in my eyes, because how they were.
I think it's a sort of like an unfair comedy duo to look at, because we know that Ronnie Corbett, brilliant comedian. Ronnie Barker was the writer. The fact that he even used to write sketches under a pseudonym, and not even Ronnie Corbett knew the pseudonym that he was writing under. I will recommend this to any listener. There's a book called Everything I Wrote, and it is every sketch that Ronnie Barker wrote under his own name and his pseudonym, and including fork handles. And just reading them off the page, it's as funny as watching it. The guy knew how to write on paper something that's funny audible. It's as funny on the paper as it is being performed. It's genius.
But them guys, like they were able to do quite a lot, like, because obviously they did the sketches. Like, remember the worm?
Oh God, yes, the worm that turned.
Yeah, the worm that turned. That was it. That was fucking brilliant. And it was that in its way is sexism working right, you know. And it's like how that can be funny even in today's standards. And yet,
I'm gonna get the name of it wrong. There was an amazing movie starring John Travolta. I think it was called White Man's Prejudice. I'll have to look it up, and I'll put it on the Twitch channel when it comes up. But it's you're absolutely right about the worm that turned. It's sort of like turning sexism on its head. It's an amazing movie starring John Travolta, but where the whites are the minority in America, and they are being treated to a lesser degree the way that blacks were being treated in the 60s and 70s, and it's eye-opening. But the Ronnies were able to turn around, burn your jock straps rather than burn your bras. There was something educational and pushing about it. Here's one I don't like. Here's one I don't like from that era, and I know people are going to hate me for it, but Benny Hill. I never found Benny Hill funny.
I think the best thing about Benny Hill was the music.
Yakety sax. So, chasing out.
That last little shit. Yeah.
I mean, Ernie, the fastest milkman in the West, maybe that was a good song. That was funny. But the actual show, it was sort of like, I know exactly what's going to happen. This buxom blonde is going to end up in her underwear, and he's going to be chasing her around a field somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be funny. And even as a young boy in the 70s, I didn't find that funny. I'm like, why? Why is that funny?
For me, it was the innuendo with that out being an innuendo, and it was just a rude, blatant innuendo. So it was like, it was the worst things of saying cunt without saying cunt.
Oh, what was the gag? It was I went into the field and there were two baby male cows in the field. Bullocks. No, I'm fairly sure they were cows.
Yeah, I like that one.
And it's also interesting to see that here are a couple that a couple of people that I absolutely adore. A couple of acts that I completely adore: Smith and Jones, Fry and Laurie, Newman and Baddiel, Reeves and Mortimer. But it's ended up that those have ended up going on to post-solo careers, where one has ended up becoming more famous than the other. I absolutely adored. I've got a real thing about Fry and Laurie. I mean, and I understand how they got to know each other at Cambridge and what have you. So Hugh Laurie is now a Hollywood star. He ended up with House and all that sort of stuff. Stephen Fry is revered.
And he's quite a talented blues artist.
And the man has never taken a music lesson in his life. I mean, it just makes me sick.
I hate that. I do hate that. I genuinely hate that. I hate Dave Grohl. I fucking absolutely love him. I love him, but his level of talent can go and fuck himself.
And if any of our listeners can hear grunting in the background, no, I don't have a woman trapped on my boat. That's my assistant's dog getting annoyed that people are moving onto the boat next door. If I did have a woman trapped on board this boat, the number you need to call is 999 and report the mad boatman from Gosport. Newman and Baddiel. I love Newman and Baddiel. Newman and Baddiel in Pieces. They had some of the greatest sketches, I think. Let's call it what they called it, the alternative comedy scene ever. They were the guys that enabled arena tours of comedy to happen. Yeah. We would not have arena tours in the UK if it wasn't for Newman and Baddiel. I would love to see Newman back on the circuit. I know he's been very, very, like us, psychologically unwell. David Baddiel, brilliant talent, but Rob Newman, I thought, was the talent of the two. Were you familiar with what they did?
I'm not too hot on. I'm saying that I probably am. I'm just a fucking.
The most famous sketch that ended up hitting the popular meme was History Today. So they used to be sat opposite each other, two history professors, and then they just end up taking the piss out of each other. Imagine a slum whorehouse room where this woman is doing depraved acts from men for money. I can imagine the scene. That's your mum, that is.
I do remember that, actually, yeah.
That was Newman and Baddiel. Absolutely. And Rob Newman had this Jarvis. Me, alone in a dormitory full of prepubescent girls. Imagine the shame. He was just brilliant for it.
The Hale and Paces as well.
Hale and Pace were brilliant. I think they're underrated because people said they were too populist, but it was so fucking funny. I mean, Northern Airways, when they did the sketch about, EasyJet and Ryanair were becoming popular, so they made their own. It's Northern Airways. So you got issued mushy peas instead of a meal and what have you. They ended up doing. They had their own little sitcom of the Scousers. That's where we get the hey, calm down thing from was Hale and Pace. They made that into a popular meme.
Which kind of leads you on to the Harry Enfield and Chum songs as well.
Now, Harry was one I was thinking about putting on that list because he's gone from between ensemble cast, duets, because it was, with Paul Whitehouse, is that his name?
Yeah.
But I always
wasn't it Linda Burke as well?
Oh God, Linda Burke. So the teenagers, Kevin and Perry.
Yeah, and the slobs.
And the slobs. Oh my God, you've just brought joy back to my heart. When the slobs had their baby. And what have you named her? Spudulika. It's exotic. And people won't remember. There are going to be younger members of this audience won't remember there was a fast food chain store in the UK called Spudulike. And that's why she was called Spudulika.
One of the things that I remember off the Harry Enfield and Chum song was Jürgen the German.
Oh God, yeah.
Like even though that's technically not racism; it's more nationalism, I suppose. Like it's still, I think that would still hold up now, and I think I know quite a few German people and stuff, and I think that they would actually find it quite funny.
You just made me realise something, mate, because we're talking about just to give everybody background on the way we run Project Comedy Podcast. We think up topics in advance of what we'd like to do, and we're thinking about the next episode being comedy characters. So comedians that present a character on stage. We look at those duets, these duos. So many of them had occasional characters that they drop into their shows. Yeah. And I've just remembered, with Harry Enfield, Tim Nice but Dim.
Ah, yeah.
Such an amazing character that still has relevance today.
Tory boy.
Ooh, lovely chap, lovely. Paul Whitehouse, the bumbling general. Lorry load of interesting cheeses, right? A room full of monkeys, and terribly drunk at the time. They had these occasional characters that they were allowed to play with in that format.
I was literally telling my missus about this the other day. Julio Giulio.
Oh, dude.
The Italian fellow who played soccer for Newcastle.
Yeah.
As British shag that Danny Burr like.
And it's flooding me back with various characters that people have been able to drop in and out because they have that format. Yeah. And I honestly believe that format should come back to enable comics to have some reach.
Oh, definitely.
But you don't always have to be one person. You can
I would love someone to do a modern take on Nick Frisby. Yeah. I'd love someone to do a Nick Frisby nowadays. That'd be brilliant. Nick Frisby was the best.
It was. I absolutely adored it because I grew up. I was a young adult at the time, and I felt ashamed that I used to love watching The Broom Cupboard with Philip Schofield and what was the name of Gordon the Gopher.
Yeah.
And then it was what's his name in Ed the Duck. I've forgotten his name now. Mark Curry, and Ed the Duck. Thank God kids today have got Barker. Thank God kids today have got Barker because Barker's brilliant. There's an Australian one. It's an old Australian one, and he's the rudest little bastard in the world. I love him. Look him up on YouTube.
The little dog fella. Is it the little dog?
And he's with this lovely little blonde lady, and he is rude as fun. Yeah. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I like him.
We're going to pause for a second. I want everybody to now start thinking which bits of that could actually be brought forward. But we're going to take a break for a second and show you how you could end up joining Project Comedy. Are you a veteran or even still serving and think you'd like to give stand-up comedy a go? Then why not join us in Project Comedy? Visit the Project Recce website, that's projectrecce.org, then click on how it works. You'll find a Register Here button in the Project Comedy section. Fill that in and the HQ staff will soon get you connected with the Project Comedy community and its weird and wonderful ambassadors. You'll be invited to our green rooms, where if you want it, we can train you in the basics. If not, you can just come along and have a laugh with us and see what we're up to and what it gives us.
One of the things I did love about like the Harry Enfield and Chums one is remember when they did them public service announcement sketches.
Oh God!
Like, L is for Labour, L is for life.
Women, know your place.
Know your place.
Here is a thought process going through a man's head. Notice how it's carefully stored. Ladies, this is what happens in your brain.
Look how ugly she is. To think she only did 1 week of university.
And, do you know what? But that's such genius in today's market. Because it's ripping the piss out of negative stereotypes to go, guys, it's not okay to do this shit. Absolute genius. And some of the ones I want to talk about now, mate, comedy ensembles.
Mm-hmm.
where you end up with a bunch of people together to make comedy. There's a couple of others that I could throw into this, but my instant hit list of 5 are the Goons, Monty Python, the comic strip, the Fast Show, and Goodness Gracious Me. They show stepping stones to me. So obviously with the Goons, these were all guys that had been demobbed after military service in the Second World War. And I'm going to turn around and say, this is why I hate the term alternative comedians. The first alternative comedians were the Goons. They broke the mold. They were allowed to be chaotic and make fun rather than it being, they still use setups and punchlines, but it isn't by the old comedy rules of, I'm going to say something now, and this is the bit you laugh at.
Yeah.
The Goons, because of their chaos and because of their military service and the horrors they had seen, they invented new comedy, as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely.
And then you go on to the next step, where you've got Monty Python, who were trying to rebel against what the Goons did. And you ended up with genius like Life of Brian. I still can't believe Life of Brian got such a negative reaction from it was banned
Catholic Church.
Well, it was banned in go on. I'm going to be hated by many of our listeners now. What is the worst city in Wales, South Wales, called? Swansea. It was banned.
What's the worst city in South Wales called? All of them.
Swansea. It was banned. It was illegal to show the Life of Brian in Swansea until the mid-1990s.
Right. Being as though you said that now, I want you to tell me a good town in South Wales.
Cardiff. Brilliant. Love Cardiff.
Really?
I adore Cardiff. It's a brilliant run ashore. One of the best nights out in the UK.
Fuck off.
Oh, mate, I love going out in Cardiff. It's like Newcastle with more rain. I fucking love Cardiff.
Right. The fact that you're comparing it to a place that is just exact same, but with more rain, that's not a good thing.
Some of my best nights out have been in Cardiff. It is a place to go for the crack.
That says more about your nights out than fucking Cardiff.
There are certain cities in the UK you go for the crack, and it is. And I'm English. I can't claim the word crack.
No, I was just about to say that's crack your crack, not my crack.
In the British Isles, the places that I if you tell me we're going there for a weekend, and I can guarantee I'm going to have a laugh. It's going to be Cardiff. It's going to be Newcastle. It's going to be Belfast. It's going to be Dublin. It's going to be Cork, Brighton. I can guarantee I will go there. I can go there on my own and have a riot. There are certain cities I know it's just going to be a laugh.
Cardiff's not one of them.
Cardiff is. Right, that's it. We're going to have to take Project Comedy to Cardiff. Listeners, tweet us if you're in Cardiff. You got a comedy venue we can come down to. Show this man that he's wrong. Cardiff is a cracking place.
Pay me to go there.
Then it breaks into what they call alternative comedy, the comic strip.
Yeah.
The comic strip, let's be honest about it, really, comic strip existed before, but the public didn't know about it. They'd seen bits of the comic strip, basically through the male members of the cast, being the guys that went on to do, that made the young ones, but they hadn't seen the other characters, especially the likes of French and Saunders.
Yeah.
The comic strip became popular with the advent of Channel 4. I mean, the fact that the main show on the very first, I remember watching it. I was a young teenager, and the day Channel 4 started, and they're going, "Oh, brand new! We've got moved to 4 channels on television." Yes, kids, we only had 3 TV channels when I was a kid. The 4th channel opened, and the first program was fucking Countdown, and I'm there going, "What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this?" But that night, 5 Go Mad in Dorset was played that night, and I have never laughed so much in my life as watching, and it was so rude. It was so rude, but they could get away with it. It was based on Enid Blyton, and Timmy the dog. And at one point, Timmy is licking something, and Dawn French is there going, "Oh, Timmy, I really like it when you lick me there." It's so disgusting to think. Hang on, it's the first night of a brand new TV channel. We're joking about bestiality already. What the fuck has just happened?
It was good. It was good time for getting into it, though, isn't it? You can imagine, like, the nowadays sort of way of getting famous by doing something like that is to be fucking stupid or doing something on the internet, isn't it? So,
I mean, I have been watching it. Obviously, mate, I'm such a nerd about everything I do, including comedy. And I'm seeing so many stand-ups are making the circuit now because of TikTok and YouTube.
Yeah.
And I'm there going, but to me, it doesn't seem right. Maybe I'm too old for it, but it doesn't feel like you're working your bones. And to me, it gives me the fear of, here, let's take a so-called, and I'm going to call him a so-called stand-up from today. I don't think he's a stand-up. I really don't like the man. Ricky Gervais. I don't think Ricky Gervais is a stand-up. He's just somebody that likes belittling other people, and he got a voice through The Office.
I like some of the stuff he says and some of the stuff he does. That series he did, Afterlife hit me quite hard, and I really like it.
I'm going to be honest about it. I've not watched it, and I've not watched it for reasons of PTSD. That's the reason. I can see it being triggering. But I tried The Office. I tried Extras. I tried Derek, and Derek was the one that broke me. It was sort of like, no, this is just cruel. You're trying to pretend it's funny. It's actually fucking cruel. I don't like it. There's something about Ricky I don't like. I would not want to be in the same room as Ricky Gervais, because I think I would end up doing time because I would punch him out.
I don't think I've ever been that annoyed at someone that I'd want to hit them. Which obviously, going off my aesthetic is quite an alien thing for anyone to think.
Doesn't, and as we said in cancel culture, if you like him, love him, go ahead, enjoy him. It just doesn't hit for me. For me, I just find it a combination of cringe humor, which I detest at the best of times. But it's also the fact that I find so much of it belittling. I mean, there was one scene in The Office. The scene that broke me in The Office is when they left the lass in the wheelchair in the stairwell during a fire alarm. And I just went, that's beyond cruel. There is nothing funny about this at all. That you're going to leave a camera on this, and that I'm supposed to find that funny. There's nothing funny about it in any shape or form.
Yeah, where it wasn't a real fire, though.
I know, but it's sort of, that hurt. I don't know about you, mate. I mean, for once, we're in a podcast, and it's only the two PTSD mentalists in the room.
No.
But I found, since I've had my diagnosis of PTSD, I found my empathy level has gone through the roof. I care about other people 10 times more, but I care about myself 10 times less. So when I see other people being mistreated, it hurts me more.
I agree on that sort of, like, like my level of caring about other people has gone through the roof a lot more, but then I still equally don't give a shit about other people. which kind of says a lot more about where I was before.
Okay, then in that case, I'll change the subject and go back to some of these comedy ensembles. Then the two that I adore, because I think they rewrote the rules in many ways and enabled other things to happen. The first one being the Fast Show, the second one being Goodness Gracious Me. The Fast Show, for actually having a sketch comedy show where you were allowed to experiment and bring randomness into it. I mean, the character, brilliant, isn't it brilliant? Isn't it? Taking the Mickey out of the banal, or Dave Angel, Eco Warrior, that's now a commercial. Jazz Club, smooth, nice. Finding the humor in those things that enabled so many other comedians to find their place because of the back work that they generated for people. And then, goodness gracious me, I mean, who would have? My parents, thank God my mum's dead. Thank God my mum's dead. The fact there was an entire series where every member of the cast was Asian. My mum would never have had that on the telly. And I know it's a cliche now, but it was such genius writing. But going for an English, I have never.
Go for an
English. I was physically hurting laughing. Wait,
the only other time that I can
16 bread rolls and butter. What the fuck?
The only other time that I can equate that into a thing is Eddie Murphy doing stand-up, and he was saying about how when you order a Chinese and when the waiter sends us back, he's like that. And then he's like, "Do you reckon they go to McDonald's?" And then he's like that. "I'd like a large order fries." Opening his eyes, dead round. And then,
but you look at the list we put together there. Goons, Monty Python, Comic Strip, Fast Show. Goodness gracious me! Actually, that's enabled the current comedy circuit, but I think it's lost. I think it's lost its roots.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at the way that they've paved kind of things, and then you see how people kind of ran with it a little bit. So you've got your man who did Phone Jacker. I loved Phone Jacker when it was in, and Trigger Happy TV.
Dom Jolly,
yeah. Trigger Happy TV, he was brilliant. And what I liked more about him was the fact that he called time on it before it got dull.
Now I'm going to come into this on the next section, mate.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I shit on you.
No. I'm glad you said it because it gives me a great segue to go into it.
And what was the other for the Dennis Pennis? Do you remember Dennis Pennis?
Yes.
He was amazing, and what he did was
Demi Moore. The line he did to Demi Moore. If the role really called for it and it was essential to the plot, would you keep your clothes on? Genius.
See, I'd love for nowadays for there to be a Dennis Pennis character. I mean, you have who's your man who was in?
That's sort of been taken over by things like Borat and Ali G, hasn't it?
Yeah, Borat and Ali G and stuff like that. But the only thing that I can recall to sort of Dennis Pennis that's happening now is your man who's in The Hangover with the beard. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and the interview between two palms.
Yeah. That's the only thing that I can equate it to. But the only reason why they go for that is because they know obviously what they're getting into, and it is a joke.
Yes.
But with Dennis Pennis, he was going through like
it was guerrilla comedy.
Through the bone.
We'd ever seen guerrilla comedy
stuff. Yeah, and it's just like, can you imagine if he went up to Amber Heard now and just said, "So Amber, do you fancy telling the truth anytime soon?"
Oh, mate, I would, especially with the news that's come out today. So it's going to be yesterday's news to the rest of you. The fact that the guy that Boris Johnson appointed to be his standards advisor has now told him you've now got to explain why breaking the law isn't a breach of the ministerial conduct. Fucking, I've got a gig tomorrow night. I've got to write a gag about it. I've got to write a gag about that. That's going to be fucking brilliant.
So you break the law, grand, and you lied about breaking the law, grand, and you lied in Parliament about breaking the law, grand, but you didn't break the code.
No, because I've just changed the rules, and minor breaches are no longer sackable offences.
Yeah, I love how the guy broke the rules of his own rules, but didn't know he broke the rules of his own rules.
And then when he realised he's broken the rules, he's changed the rules, So he hasn't broken the rules that he broke when he broke them.
That he made.
He's the bloke that insists that when you're playing Monopoly, that every fine goes under no parking, and when you land on no parking, you get the money, which is not a rule in Monopoly.
He's just like the big brother, isn't it? It's just like, yeah, but that's my toy. No, no, I win. Why? Because I win, right? Shut up.
My house, my rules. My house, my rules. Here's one for you then, mate. Because I don't think there are a couple exceptions to this.
All right, go on.
Sitcoms. Sitcoms seem to have changed dramatically, and I've made a big list here, mate. I made a big list here. Right. The first one I'm going to say, I'm guaranteeing you won't have heard of.
This list is as long as my chain.
Have you ever heard of Round the Horn?
Round the Horn?
Yeah.
I've got Round the Horn. Round the clock.
I'm going to recommend every one of our listeners, especially Gabe, listen to Round the Horn. It was...
I thought they said Round the Home.
It challenged beyond challenged the times. Mr. Horn ran this comedy ensemble, and every week it was the most popular radio show before TV was big TV and what have you. There was so much homosexuality in it at a time when homosexuality was illegal. It really challenged the times. But let's go into the other ones I put here in no particular order. Happy Days.
It was shit.
Mork and Mindy.
Was good.
Taxi. The Cosby Show. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Del Death of Dupar. Fawlty Towers. The Young Ones, and then its generations that became Bottom. Blackadder. Father Ted. I can't think of any sitcom that actually challenges the status quo of the day at the moment. We had sitcoms like, let's take Lee Mack's Not Going Out, or Outnumbered, or Josh, or At Home with the Richardsons.
Yeah, it's like Happy Days was challenging racism. Mork and Mindy was challenging immigration and all that sort of stuff. And it was just like, nothing's really happening now. And I think everyone's kind of playing it safe. So it's just like, oh, this would be funny, so we'll do that. As opposed to going down the lines of...
The two of those that are probably the most important to me in my development as a human being are Blackadder and Father Ted.
I love Blackadder. Yeah.
And I think it's because of because of my age. We didn't have Sky Plus, we didn't have VCRs and all that sort of stuff at that time. You had to be at home to watch that episode. And the three that I would make sure I was sat in front of the TV to watch was the new episode of The Young Ones, Blackadder, and Father Ted. That was, I've got to be there to watch it. Because not only was it funny, but it challenged something in me as well, and it changed my worldview. I didn't realize it at the time, but now looking back at it, it changed my worldview at the time.
And like, if you weren't there, you completely missed it. Like, unless you had one of them fancy recorders. But like, how a lot of people in the modern day world won't get the idea, where you can just pause live TV or record it from. You don't even have to be at home to record it or anything now. Like, in my generation, there was a little box that came up in the top corner, a little black and white stripy zebra box.
Telling you the advert was about to start.
The advert was about to start, so it was just like, right, I've got, all right, and you'd be the youngest one, which was me, would be like mobilized and on edge to go.
Put the kettle on. Yeah, I'm going to the loo.
Yeah, and all that sort of shit ready, and get the biscuits out, refresh the biscuits and stuff. And it was just like, you don't, you're born. Yeah.
I was in sixth form for Blackadder the Second, so the Elizabethan era.
Yeah.
I was in lower sixth at the time, and I remember the day after a Blackadder episode came out, we would be reciting the script to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I bet those fair buttocks have never been put between two splintered planks to save a ship from sinking. And
he was ginger.
he was ginger. And of course, that's the legend that is John Pertwee, Doctor Who. He was my Doctor Who, and he's doing a comedy role. And I remember being in, I was in my final year of university for Blackadder Goes Forth, and that beautiful stroke, tragic, horrific scene of the guys going over the top.
Yeah.
To see a sitcom end that way, the futility of that particular war. I mean, God, let's hope that one of our listeners or one of our veterans or something could actually make a comedy like that about Iraq or Afghan. Because that would be such a fitting tribute to that.
Definitely.
I mean, all we've had so far is Gary Tank Commander.
One thing that I think you missed out on the sitcoms there was Red Dwarf.
Now, Red Dwarf, again, a piece of genius. I was concerned about what I was writing there. It makes it sound like it's all BBC focused, although lots of these things aren't BBC.
A lot of the comedy stuff was on BBC though. I think the edges of like Channel 4 was very much down the lines of the new age sort of stuff. So giving rise to Chris
Friday Night Live, our version of Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Chris Evans, Friday.
Sue Parker and was it the two Sues? Sue Parker and
Late Lunch. So Sue Perkins and Mel Godrich.
That's the one. Sue and Mel. Yeah, Mel and Sue. I'm again sorry guys. I'm shit with names. And Mel and Sue. If you're listening, I do apologise for fucking up.
And if you're listening, Mel and Sue, I love you both. And I'm really, really annoyed that, Sue, you're a lesbian because you've been my biggest crush for fucking years. I just love those two ladies. I think they were the ladies that proved to me that comedy can belong to ladies in their own way. I was a
look at Jennifer Saunders.
I had it. No, this is a weird crush. It's not a crush because of looks. It's a crush because of personality. Jo Brand. The first time Jo Brand took to the stage, and I just went, "You are something fucking special." That I would love to go on the piss with Jo Brand for the night. I would be the ultimate fanboy. That woman
Jo Brand would fucking peg the shit out of you.
She would kill me. She would kill me. But the first time I saw her on Friday Night Live,
she would break you in half.
I'm looking at Ben Elton going, "Will you shut the fuck up, you twat? You're annoying the fuck out of me." And Harry Enfield doing loads of money, and Stavros the kebab shop owner and what have you. Jo came on looking the opposite of, purposely not looking attractive, but her gags were landing and landing and landing, and I'm there going, "There's something about you, Mrs. There is something amazing." I'm such a fanboy of Jo Brand.
I love the Saunders and Dean bit where they dressed as fellas, the fat fellas. And they were just vulgar. It was brilliant. Loved it.
Here's one for you then. A situation comedy of today. Is there a situation comedy today that you watch? I mean, I'm thinking back to my glory year. There was beauty in comedy back then, sitcoms back then. Here's one for you: The Good Life. I loved The Good Life. It was funny, it was charming, it was attractive, it was comfortable. And I'm trying to think of a modern day sitcom, and I can't think of one.
No, the only things that I watch that were comedy wise nowadays, I like Bob's Burgers, and I like Archer, and I like Rick and Morty.
And Family Guy.
The Family Guy things.
Dad. Yeah. But they're cartoons.
Yeah.
Written by geniuses.
Yeah. There's no human show that I kind of watch these days.
We've got to flip it on its head. To the negative ones that were out there. One I know I've mentioned before, and I don't know if you will have heard of these three. One, one I've mentioned before is controversial, but the three that I think are just massively negative today, and it's because of the bias of the times and they were excused stuff. Curry and chips. Ever heard of that one?
No.
Spike Milliken. Let's be honest about it. He was very Winston Churchill in his ways. He just didn't like anybody from the Asian subcontinent. Love Thy Neighbor, which the Americans remade as well, and it was huge over in America, where a white family have a black family move next door. Yeah. So it was some nig-nog references. And another one called Mind Your Language, which was English as a foreign language class. And every one of the foreigners in the room was a stereotype of that nation. So bit from the Indian fella, the Chinese guy couldn't say ours.
Racism.
It was. And if you look at any of the forums, because when I was doing the research for the show tonight, they also bring in Till Death Do Us Part or In Sickness and Health into that bracket as well. But I disagree with that one. That was the intent of In Sickness Till Death Us Do Part was to take the piss out of the racists. Unfortunately, they were so subtle about it, it gave the racists a justification for their belief. Alf Garnett's allowed to say it, so why am I not allowed to say it?
Yeah.
Curry and Chips, Love Thy Neighbor, Mind Your Language, they were just fucking horribly racist shows.
It's just how it fell short of the mark, isn't it? I mean, you'd like to think that they were written with the best of intentions and stuff. But
here's one for Channel 4, mate. You know when we're talking about Channel 4, not necessarily fine. Did you ever watch Smack the Pony?
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a show. An entire female cast with some of the most amazing female talent out there.
Yeah.
And I've got to admit, there's another one of my massive crushes, especially because she's exactly 1 year younger than me, and I'm not going to say which one that is. I think you can guess. But Smack the Pony, oh my God, female humour of that form. I mean, do you remember the swimsuits sketch?
I think off the top of my head, I'll have to think.
Do comes out. Do comes out wearing her swimming costume, about to go swimming with the rest of the girls, and they're trying to go. Half of her bush is hanging out the bottom of her bikini, bottom of her swimsuit, and they're trying to be subtle about it. You've got a pube showing, a pube, not pointing out she's got two halves of afros sticking out the bottom of her swimsuit. It's women taking the piss out of women. It was joyous.
Lovely.
And there was also the one that, her name will come back to me in a second. Oh, I hate myself. But there was one about how to order a drink at the bar. And you need inflatable breasts and nipples.
Oh, I remember that one. I wonder why.
Oh, God, what's her name? She's
the only reason why I can remember shit like that.
This is, do you know what really annoys me about it? She's the one I've got the crush on. She's exactly 364 days younger than me. She's a massive campaigner for.
She's a massive campaigner for what? It's not Sally Phillips.
Sally Phillips. That's it. Oh my God. Oh, ultimate crush on Sally Phillips. Sorry, Sally, if you ever listen to this podcast, I will self-voluntarily place my restraining order against you. I will keep a respectful distance away from you.
Would you?
I'm an ugly West Country man living on a yacht with a dog. I will keep well away.
Would you invent a time machine, commit suicide, and then in the hopes of being scattered as ashes to be then grown into a tree, which will hopefully then be made into the toilet paper that will wipe her ass?
But can you imagine how painful this is for me? She's exactly, nearest damn it, a year younger than me, right? She's funny, attractive. I'm trying to be a stand-up comic and I'm a lunatic. No, she is my goddess of a woman. She is, Oh, hail her. Sally, I love you. Love you. Sorry. Right. I might have to edit most of this out of the podcast record.
See, the
Looking
annoying
back
thing as well is like it makes it sound really sexist that I remember the blow up tits and the nipples bit. But as a fairly ugly guy, you will not know how jarring it is to be served by 7 women in front of you that joined the queue after you at the bar.
That's something that doesn't happen today. In the queue to get a drink.
Yeah.
I used to hate it when the guy used to wave around a £20 note to get served first. Nobody does that anymore post-COVID because they're not going to wave around their platinum card because everybody's paying for their fucking drinks contactless now.
I just wish that my bank account was contactless with my card.
So looking back at everything we've spoken about, we've spoken about individual stand-up comics from the past, double acts, comedy ensembles, sitcoms. Looking back at those, which bits are relevant to bring forward to today? Are there gaps in the current comedy circuit that could be brought forward?
I think the realms of, like I said, the character thing. I'd love to see the character thing again, and I think like the likes of Borat and all that sort of stuff. It'd be nice to see it on stage as more. When
you say character, I mean you mean more like being able to drop in occasional characters, rather than being that character for your entire career.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I said that your man Borat and Ali G, Sacha Baron Cohen and all that. I think he's done it the best recently. I mean, it'd be nice to see.
But he's sat in that character for the entire thing rather than dropping in and out of it.
Yeah, for that bit, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
I mean, then you've got to kind of do like, it'd be nice if live at the Apollo we did Sacha Baron Cohen doing it, and one minute he comes out as Borat, next minute he's coming out as Ali G, next minute he's coming out as someone else. It'd be cool to do that.
It's like the one I'm going to throw into it is Rowan Atkinson. The way that he's developed his career, I'm not going to call him stand-up comedian, but he's done 5/6 iterations of Blackadder. Let's forget about the last 2. They're shit. And he's done Bean as well. He's been allowed to reinvent. The Man in the Moon, I can't remember his name, but he was one of the lead characters in Taxi. Do you know who I'm talking about? I know loads of our listeners will, and they'll be able to come out with his name. He used to play this very naive person on stage, and he played it in Taxi. But he also had this hyper crude character that used to heckle his own performances. He was allowed to reinvent himself all the way through his career. And I'm worried that comedians are being stuck to, I've got to be this person on stage at all times. So, and we're going to talk about in the next episode, is having a comedy character or a comedy performance a worthwhile thing to do, like James Acaster, Risha Ayawadi, Jack D, and what have you. The pub landlord that is Al Murray and what have you. But I'm worried that people see that now and go, that's what comedy is. But we go back to our youth and seeing comedy. You were allowed to play with characters. Morecambe and Wise, beautiful example. They could be anything in every scene. But I think those sort of elements should be brought forward again. Equally, when we were talking about, and I didn't expect me to be talking about him at the end, Brian Connolly.
Yeah, Brian Connolly was one of the best ones of it, I think.
But the fact that he actually did that educated step of entertaining the kids at the same time as entertaining the adults, he brought youth, and I mean beyond youth culture, to the main performance. And I can't think of another comedian at the moment doing it other than, I'm going to tell a joke about Peppa Pig. No, he was actually doing something far more with it. Those sort of references can come forward.
Yeah, or you can base a whole show around entertaining the whole family. And like we were touching on, well, you guys were touching on because you wouldn't fucking have me on it. We're saying about clean bits.
There's
But
no way you could ever be clean, mate. Let's be honest. That's why you weren't there.
hey, my hygiene is impeccable. Right.
No. That's the hygiene of your cock. What about the rest of you?
Yeah, it kind of radiates, you know. No, it's I'd like to think that I could be clean. I think the thing with me is that I've spent so long just kind of saying what's in my head as opposed to putting a filter on it.
Yeah.
You know?
But this
I think
this
that's
isn't
right.
saying this is the comedian you have to be. This is about, and this is what I love about doing not only Project Comedy but the podcast as well. It makes us explore other routes into comedy. Is this another source of material that could come in?
Yeah.
To feed what I'm currently doing on the stage, and equally, right, I'm going to flip it on its head. What is the stuff we want to avoid from the good old days?
I'd like to avoid something that in 10 years' time someone comes back to me and says that you should fucking apologize for this again. It's just like
let's be honest about it, mate. You and I can't guarantee that.
no.
A joke I'm going to tell today, in 10 years' time, you know, when I am 63 years of age, I'm going to turn back and look at some of my guys and go, do you know what? That's in bad taste now.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, and this is the lesson I think I've learned, is when I go back to what I said at the very beginning, dyers and flyers, learn from the best of the best, avoid the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
I don't want to be Jim Davidson. If in 10 years' time and I see a gag and I can reflect upon it going, shit, I shouldn't have told that gag, I want to do what I was told in my military service. Fuck up, hand up.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's the kind of comedian I want to be. If in 10 years' time I've told a gag today that is no longer culturally relevant in 10 years' time and I can see why, I want to be the first one. I don't want somebody telling me off. I want to be the first one to go, do you know what? Seen that.
See,
not relevant today.
I think as well, I'd go down the lines like I won't apologize for it, but I would say it is in bad taste. You know, like, you know, the standards now. I think Ricky Gervais said it the other day in his most recent thing, like 10 years ago. You'd never even think that someone who could say that they were a woman had a penis, and yet to say that, if you said that joke back then, it would be offensive now. And to say it now is offensive. But then who's to say what's going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
I think it's another side effect of my PTSD. My empathy's gone through the roof.
Yeah.
I look at my views now compared to when I joined the service. My God, I've become woke, mate. I've almost become woke. I had very firm Christian beliefs in things like homosexuality,
and yet you joined the Navy?
Gender. Yeah, but I now look back on it and I go, fucking hell, did I really think those things when I was a teenager and in my 20s? And I'm there going, I'm appalled by some of the attitudes I had in my younger life. Because now this is one of the joys it's one of my joys about being on the comedy circuit, is you meet every walk of life. I thought I met every walk of life in the military. Hell no. I am meeting all the subgenres on the comedy circuit, and I'm fucking loving every minute of it. Although I'm going to point out to two particular comedians out there that I'm going to be gigging with soon, and I know listen to this podcast. No, I'm never going to sleep with you, even for a fucking experiment. It's a joy to actually see and be challenged by things that I don't consider normal.
I love how you give out about the fact that you've never had a ride in ages, and then you turn around saying to someone, "No, I'm not going to." And then you're saying about how your empathy's through the roof. You just made them feel like shit.
Oh, no. I've said it to their faces as well. Don't worry.
Yeah, but you're making them feel like shit.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
They were offering
me. No, I've not made them feel like shit. They were offering me pity fucks, and that's the only thing I get offered anymore.
Your point being fucking what?
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's episode has been brought to you by the Royal Navy and the British Army with an Irishman. You can see which way this is going. We don't have any RAF in the room tonight. That's why we're going down this track.
Hey, if you can get your Mickey wet, go and get it.
So clearly, even after more than an hour's worth of discussion, we don't know what's worthwhile bringing from the past or leaving back there. But actually, there is some stuff back there that, we could revisit. But then again, this is about you, not us. You're supposed to be the ones trying to get into comedy. We're trying to explore with it. So why don't you tell us? Tweet us at Project Comedy and even on Reddit. Gabe, what's the tag for Reddit?
r/Project Comedy, all one word. Anyone who's not cool doesn't get it.
Yeah, so he's the cool young kid. I'm the very old man that still uses Facebook and Twitter. Please talk to us. Tell us what you think could be taken from the past, introduced to the future, or even where we should be going in the future, and give us new ideas for new podcasts. Gabe, absolute delight as always to chat with you.
Yes, it was.
Love you too, babe. And here is the Army Navy loving that is just this two-man podcast episode tonight. We may be insulted on the next podcast because the RAF may turn up. Jamie is having his geek night tonight, and he's plays geek ahead of comedy. So we'll close off this podcast the same way as we always do, give you some social links and tell you how to follow us.
If you want to see what we're actually like on stage, please have a look at our YouTube channel. Search for Project Comedy, Veterans Doing Stand-Up, and look for our black and white logo that's exactly the same as the one we use for this podcast. You can also now follow us on Twitter. We can be found at Proj Comedy. That's at PROJ Comedy. And me, Jay Saunders, I can be found on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter if you look for Comic J Saunders. That's all one word with the letter J in the middle. Comic J Saunders. Thanks again to everyone that's taken part in this episode. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Project Comedy Podcast. Please support our veterans as they continue their comedy journeys. To find out more, including gigs our veterans are doing, please search for the Project Comedy group on Facebook, where you'll also find links to Project Recce, the veterans charity that makes Project Comedy possible.